Hey, Bruiser Buddies, this is Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty.
Before we dive into the episode, make sure you hit subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening on. Also, follow me on X at The Dave Dynasty and subscribe on YouTube by looking up Nostalgic Dave Dynasty. You can also buy one of my shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com/The Dave Dynasty. Now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to 1 hour of the toughest, roughest wrestling you'll ever see.
That's right, Dick the Bruiser said it all.
The big question, have you got the endurance? Have you got the brains to get past the excellence of execution?
The reason why Axe and myself were put on this earth is to demolish people.
Bobby Heenan, that is a very good-looking sport coat you've got on.
Yeah, and I paid for mine. Mine isn't government issue.
Hello, everybody. Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. By golly, we're ready to go with another big week of championship wrestling.
Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to a very special edition of Wrestling Nostalgia. On April 3rd, the world lost Flying Fred Curry, and we're going to spend this episode remembering both the man and the wrestler. Joining me to do that in the first segment will be Supermouth Dave Drason, former manager, photographer, who worked with Fred and knew Fred, and he's going to talk to me a bit about the career side of Fred. And then in the second segment, joining me will be Mike Curry and Fred Curry III, two of Fred's sons, who will talk to me also about his career, but a lot more about Fred the man, Fred the dad, etc., etc. Fred's going to definitely be missed by the wrestling world. I knew Fred, talked to him a few times, met him a few times. He was always a great, great guy. I was a huge fan of his. So he will definitely be missed. And of course, you know how I am. I had to pay tribute, honor, and celebrate the life and career of Flying Fred Curry. So let's take a break. When we come back, we will begin that celebration with Dave Drason. Filsinger Games is a tabletop cards and dice game company that has enjoyed success for over 3 decades. Their first game was Champions of the Galaxy and was released in 1986. Champions of the Galaxy is a tabletop game that features professional wrestling over 100 years in the future. Humans, aliens, and monsters battle in the Galactic Wrestling Federation for belts. Legends of Wrestling features officially licensed wrestling cards featuring stars like Ted DiBiase, Jimmy Snuka, Harley Race, and many, many more, including game sets for independent promotions. Each match takes place in real time. The action is fast and furious, and all the things that happen in pro wrestling, like cage matches, outside interference, 3-man tag matches, they also happen in the games. You have the opportunity to run your own wrestling promotion involving either real life stars or fictional characters of the future, or you can mix and match both. Visit filsingergames.com for more information and to order the games today. That is Filsinger Games, FILSINGERGAMES.com to order now. If you like horror movies, be sure to check out Dave Dynasty and Ike Isaacs on the Listen to Their Screams Horror Podcast. It is available on all podcast platforms and on social media at Listen to Screams. That is Listen, the number 2 in Screams. All right, and welcome back to Wrestling Nostalgia. This time, I'm being joined by a former pro wrestling photographer and manager and a current YouTube creator and wine connoisseur, Supermouth Dave Drason. Sir, how are you?
Hey, Dave, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing very well, and it's good to talk to you, Dave. Not so good with the circumstances, but we're going to talk some about Flying Fred Curry, who recently passed away. And I recently, well, the night before you and I were talking, I spoke with Fred III and Mike, two of Fred's sons, and we talked a little bit about Fred, kind of the man, the dad, that side of him a little bit. But you and I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about Fred the wrestler and go over
Well, it shouldn't be a sad day. It should be a celebration of Fred Curry.
Well,
I mean,
definitely.
he definitely was, one of the greats of Detroit's big time wrestling, and a lot of places around the world also. Let's start with his name, Fred Curry Jr., son of Wild Bull Curry. Fred was born on June 12th, 1943, in Hartford, Connecticut. In school, he was a great athlete. He took wrestling, track, and football through grade school and high school. He spent 4 years at the University of Connecticut, and then when he graduated from there, he really didn't start as a wrestler. He was a teacher at Madison Heights Junior High School. And the weird combination of that was, Madison Heights Junior High School is that George Steele or Jim Myers also coached at Madison Heights Junior High School, but in Michigan as opposed to Connecticut.
That's funny.
Yeah, and as once his career started, he really started as a referee up in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Traveling with his dad, Wild Bull. He made his professional wrestling debut on June 26th, 1963, against Boris Malenko at the Boston Garden, at the old Boston Garden.
Yeah.
He made his, debut. He was learning the ropes. And Bull came into big time wrestling in Detroit for the Sheik. And they were good friends, wrestling down in Texas for years.
Yep.
And Fred came into Detroit with Bull, and he made his debut in 1964 in a tag team match with Lou Klein. Oh, boy. But they went against Dr. Bill Miller and Hans Schmidt and came up on the losing end, but he made a big impression of the fans. And I remember being there at that show. I don't remember much about the match at all, but I remember the crowd really liking this young kid, Fred Curry.
Yeah.
His second bout, 2 weeks later at Cobo Arena, was against the Beast, Ivan Cormier. And that was another loss for Curry, but he made, good strides. And from that day on, he was a fan favorite, started winning some matches, started getting, working his way up the card, not always in the preliminaries, but he made, his, mark in the mid card. And he, eventually got into the main event, usually against the Sheik or one of the other top heels.
When I talked to his sons, we said that Sheik Curry feud was a big feud in Detroit over the years. And if it hadn't been for a guy named Bobo Brazil, it might have been the feud in Detroit over the years. But that was a long running, intense feud there in Detroit, wasn't it?
Yeah. Over the years, starting in 1967 is the first time he went against the Sheik, and all the way up until 1974. So, a good 7-8 year spread that not every show did he go against the Sheik, but, the Sheik was, going against all the, top baby faces and some of the top heels too, like Pampero Firpo, and, so many, Wild Bull Curry, so many others. So it was an interchangeable, thing, going from, Bobo to Fred Curry to Pampero Firpo to, whoever else was, hot in the territory.
Yeah. So how early in Fred's career there did he start developing that drop kick that he became known for?
Oh, right from the beginning. You could tell he was a great athlete, great body, not overly muscular, but you could tell that, he was fast in the ring. One of the original high flyers around here, host Leaping Larry Shane.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because you hear all the stories about how many and how quick Fred could throw them. And when I talked to his sons, it was like, it was kind of Fred's fish story, right? It, depending on when you talk to him, was how many he threw and how long he threw it, whether it was 20 and 10 seconds. He said every time it would shift. But nonetheless, he could throw multiple drop kicks in a very short period of time. It was very rapid fire. And his son said he would throw them whether the opponent was ready or not, was there or up or not. He would.
Oh yeah. Well, I think the most I've seen, and sort of people associated with Detroit big time wrestling, is that he did 14 in a row, and I'm not sure who the opponent was, but that's the number that we have here, that he did 14 in a row.
Yeah, and they said it was when he did it, it was very much right at crowd participation, right? The crowd would count the drop kicks.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then another thing about him, his legacy is that being a fan favorite, but he was a 9-time tag team champion here.
Yeah.
I mean, he tag team with Billy Red Lyons, Tony Marino, Louis Martinez, Bobo Brazil, and a host of other guys. So he never won a singles championship here, but he was a 9-time tag team champion.
Yeah. And a little bit later, you managed, right? Did you ever get to manage against Fred?
Yes. One of the few times was for George Cannon's Superstars of Wrestling up in Toronto.
Yeah.
Fred and Bull came in to help out because George Cannon was going against the Tunnies up there.
Yeah.
And we'd always film once a month TV at, I think it's CHCH TV, the global network.
Yeah.
And then, the very first time Fred came in, at the time I was managing Handsome Hartford Love and Eric the Red.
Yeah.
And in one of the final, because we always taped 4 shows,
mm-hmm.
and you always wanted to save that, last show, for the best.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would always do on that 4th show is, get involved, take some bumps, stuff like that, get the crowd going, good TV. So this particular 4th show, Eric the Red went against Flying Fred Curry.
Uh-huh.
And then in the dressing room, me and Fred talked about it, says, well, let's get this crowd really popped, so at, toward one point in the match, I'm going to interfere. Fred pulls me into the ring. Eric's outside the ring, and I'm panicking, what to do. And Fred grabs me, and he throws me into the corner, and I do one of the, Ric Flair,
over the
flips into the corner.
Yeah.
Only bad thing was, I told Fred, throw me towards the, TV cameras.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when he cornered me in one of the corners closest to the cameras. And he threw me into the corner, the opposite corner, near the fans.
Yeah.
So I go upside down, and the next thing I feel is, whoa, some old geezer in the front row with a cane stood up, and he just came through that bottom rope, nailed me.
Oh.
One of the guys who was also on that show, Big Jim Hutchison, remembers that to this day. He says, man, I remember that old geezer cracked you good, and we heard it all the way back here in the dressing room. And it did send me for a reel. But then, Fred did a, promo after, about me and Eric the Red and, how he's going to come and clean up, the thing. And, it all worked out for the better. It was great TV.
Yeah. One thing I was talking to, talk to us a little bit about the one time that Fred kind of flirted with being a heel, and he had to get straightened out by Bobo Brazil. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, it depends on, where in the territory. It started at Cobo Arena. I believe it was in a tag team match that I forgot who their opponents were, but it was Fred and Louis Martinez.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point in the, toward the finish, Fred attacked Louis Martinez, and the fans couldn't believe it. They were going nuts. And it's like, he, gets on, the microphone and starts, cutting a heel promo. And all of a sudden, being the fan favorite, he was almost hated as much as Bull Curry was.
Mm-hmm.
And over the next amount of weeks, Fred was going against, some of the, local baby faces and stuff, and going over. And at one point, I'd say 2-3 months into this gimmick, he went against Bobo Brazil, and during the match, it was typical match, heel versus babyface, and then at one point Bobo Brazil, gave him the cocoa butt, and Fred's like staggering around the ring, wondering what the heck is going on. Bobo gives him another one. He's, what's going on? And it sort of like brought him out of his amnesia.
Yeah.
But depending on where in the territory, that was in Detroit at Cobo Arena.
Yeah.
But it also happened, I believe, in Dayton. Could have been Dayton or Cincinnati, where Fred went against Bull Curry. The father versus son thing. And at one point during the match, Bull gave him one of the, knuckle shuffles, and Fred, starts, dazed and stuff, and he's coming out of this sort of amnesia that he had of being a heel. And then it was all, fun and games from there. He's back as a fan favorite, but it was a heck of a, good angle for, a short few months.
Yeah. Well, and Fred, he had a really great run at Texas as well in the early to mid '70s, teaming with Fritz and everything else. Were you aware of that at all at that time? Because I know you were doing some traveling, you were exchanging clips and all this stuff with other people. How aware were you in the Detroit area of what Fred was doing in Texas?
We were aware in the dressing room mainly. The fans themselves really didn't know.
Yeah.
They thought, he took a hiatus and, he just wasn't appearing on the cards.
Yeah.
But, not only was he down in Texas and doing very well, but also in Hawaii. And, when I talked to Fred, when we did our big time memory show with Terry Sullivan, I talked to Fred personally and said, we're doing this tribute, to you. And I just want to get some information and stuff. So some of the questions I was asking him was his favorite territories. And he said his favorite territory was definitely Detroit and big time wrestling. Number 2 was Texas, and number 3, Hawaii. And also during that conversation, I asked him, who were, some of his favorite opponents to go against.
Yeah.
And, it shocked me. His favorite opponent of all time to go against was Killer Carl Cox. So that must have been down in Texas.
Yeah.
Cox was, he was a hell of a heel, in his day, and he also said he loved going against the Hells Angels, Ronnie and Paul Dupree, or Chris Colt. And he did mention Fritz von Erich. He said he loved going against Fritz von Erich.
Yeah.
Well, naturally that would have been down in Texas.
Yeah. That's funny. It's not the names you would really suspect him to come up with right off the top of his, but it shows there's a different perception, right? For what fans see and how the wrestlers, how they, what they're experiencing. So that's unique.
But I also asked him, who's his least favorite guy to go against? And who would you think that would be?
Sheik.
No, he loved going against the Sheik.
Yeah,
that was an easy match for him.
No, who was it?
He told me it was Bulldog Brower.
Oh, well, okay. Kansas City.
He said it's the stiffest guy he ever went against.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, man. See, mostly my memories of Fred is there towards the end of his career when he was doing the Bruiser Bedlam stuff in Toledo, Detroit, Toledo with Jerry Grimm Jr. And yeah, he was still super popular at that time, and still working and and doing great stuff. But it's incredible the longevity of his career, and the stuff he was he was doing.
No doubt. And it didn't seem, for as many years as, he wrestled, and being a high flyer especially, it didn't seem to hamper his body like, so many other wrestlers that, were, because I saw him, the last time I saw him was at a CAC convention in Vegas. And he looked great, great physical specimen, wasn't overweight. It didn't seem he was walking with a cane or crutches or, in a wheelchair like so many other guys that were there at this reunion, were, so many guys, their bodies were just destroyed from, years of working in the ring, but it didn't seem to hamper Fred at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he lived a great long life, and then had many years after he retired, and everything else. So tell us just a little bit about Fred personally, right? As you got to know Fred, in the locker rooms, on the road, different things. What was Fred like away from the ring?
He was pretty quiet in the dressing room. When before I became super involved, as a fan, I remember a gal, Chris McConnell, had the Fred Curry fan club.
Okay.
And I was friends with her, and I belonged to the fan club. And I got to meet, Fred with her a few times, and he was pretty quiet. And then when I became the photographer for the Sheik and Big Time Wrestling, I'd be in the dressing room and stuff. And Fred was always, one of the quiet sorts. He wasn't, around bragging, boasting, being boisterous at all. But I remember him always talking about Ohio State football and him betting on football, college games.
Yeah.
And as a younger kid back then, it's like, I didn't bet or anything like that. I didn't know much about gambling, besides, my parents playing cards, pinochle and euchre and things like that. That's what I thought gambling was.
Yeah.
No, but when he would talk about betting big money on some of these college games, it just, befuddled me.
Yeah.
And then, over time, when I got in the business of managing, the first time he saw me as a manager was up in, Canada. And, he walks in the dressing room and, he looks at me, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And he thinks I'm there to take photographs and stuff. And then over the course of, the next hour or so, everybody's getting dressed, putting on their ring gear and stuff. Well, I'm changing into my manager outfits, and he's looking at us like, what are you up to? And I said, well, I'm managing. Who? And I said, Hartford Love and Eric the Red. And he just couldn't believe it,
Yeah.
And it's almost, not only me, but, the same thing like, I'll say Jim Cornette, started as a photographer. There's, definitely photographs out there of him, shooting photographs ringside. And, I just saw one the other day with him standing, with his camera over. They were taking Andy Kaufman out on a stretcher.
Yeah.
So it's like, him, me.
So many guys. Scott Romer, Dave McClain.
Paul E. Dangerously.
Yeah,
he started that way. And, and I still have photographs in my files. From those guys when they were photographers.
Right.
So, it's weird how, wrestling, guys get in the business and, what we do and, more than anything, I'd like to, say I'm like the big time wrestling historian. There's not many people left, especially wrestlers who worked in this territory.
Yeah.
Now, we lose Fred and, he one of the giants. So not many guys left.
Yeah. I've always loved Fred and always had an admiration. I've talked to him several times, met him a couple times, and he was always really nice to me, really pleasant and just,
yep.
And everything else. And, but he's one of those guys. I don't know. It's a weird word to use. I always view him as underappreciated. Right. And it's a lot of it's timing, right? Because he wasn't in the huge boom, TV boom, the cable boom. Yep. So it's like, the video is not, there's video, but it's not as wide. You have to kind of search it out a little bit. But, and I was talking to his sons, Fred with the drop kicks and his style he really helped to shape wrestling a little towards the future, right? Because I know it's weird for us to think now with the multiple drop, but that was unique then. And so in his way, he was kind of laid a lot of the early foundation for a lot of what the guys do now. He would probably hate me saying that, but, because that was, he was, like you said, it's weird to call him a high flyer, but that, in the day, that's what he was. And that's what he was.
Yeah. And, if you go back into, wrestling lore, like one of the first high flyers that really made a name for himself was Leaping Larry Shane, of course. Then along came Fred Curry. And then right about the same time, Fred Curry was Rocky Johnson.
Yep.
And Rocky Johnson, was a hell of a drop kick specialist.
Yep.
So those three guys, really set the standard for, who after those three, really was known for their drop kicks. I can't think of anybody.
Maybe Jim, Jim Brunzell. Well, he did that gimmick, a little bit. But,
okay.
I mean,
I never saw him work, so I'm sorry to say.
No, it's okay.
But but you go into we're guys like you and me and so many others, Tom Burke, and we're a dying breed. We read stuff online, like, the top 10 wrestlers, or who's the Mount Rushmore, and who's the greatest, drop kick, who did the greatest sleeper hold, who did the greatest figure four. None of the guys from our era are never mentioned.
Yeah.
It's always Ric Flair, Randy Savage. Oh, the greatest match, Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat. Not saying it wasn't a great match, but best of all time? No way. You go back, I always say in my personal eyes that I saw was, Cowboy Frankie Lane and Chris Colt. Most amazing match I've ever seen in my life. But there's so many others, like I seen Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk go at it. I seen Dory Funk and Harley Race. These, giants of professional wrestling don't even get mentioned these days. No. And those were the, forefathers of everything that these guys are doing these days.
Yeah.
Sorry to say, but I really wish that, people, when they speak or, put something out there online, that they do their research first.
Sure.
And
you brought up that's an interesting topic, and you brought up an interesting name, which I always associate with Fred Lynn, not with Fred Kerr, excuse me. Fred Lynn's a baseball player. But you mentioned these lists, and a lot of people will talk about who is the best baby face of all time. And the name that everybody always throws out there is Rick Steamboat, right? And no disrespect to Ricky. He was a great babyface, whatever else. But, come on. I mean, to me, greatest babyface of all time, that's Fred Curry. I mean, he's at least got to be named in the same breath, right? In that same discussion. How could you not?
Of course. There's just, but numerous, thousands upon thousands of guys who could be put in that category.
Sure.
I could say Bobo Brazil and Tony Marino, and oh God, there's just so many others. You can even say Lou Thez.
Every territory had a Rick Steamboat, right? At least one.
Right.
Had that guy.
Bruno.
Yeah. I know, being from Indiana, I don't care if everybody in the state, they may not know wrestling at all, but it seems like they all have a Dick the Bruiser story. But so every territory had that. And again, I don't mean any disrespect to Rick Steamboat, but you got to go deeper than just the cable era. And
no doubt about it.
And I think if you do, Fred Curry should be in a different level than what people thought. I mean, he should be discussed with more of these guys, right? It did so much, right? Laid the foundation. I mean, a lot of what he did, the guys in the 80s, quote unquote, just took from what he was doing as a babyface with the drop kicks and the style. I mean, a lot of that's Fred Curry.
Yeah. And for the great career that he had, starting in 1963, his career lasted until 1990, and his final match, Fred Curry went against Sabu, August 4th, 1990 at the Toledo Speedway in Ohio. That was his final match.
Which is such a cool thing to think, right? Obviously Sabu, the nephew of the Sheik, and it's such a cool, right? The lineage there. It's, with the Currys in the Sheik and his family go back. So, because, you can think Fred Curry and the Sheik, but it's also Fred Curry and Bull Curry, like you mentioned, Bull Curry and the Sheik. It goes back, right? And I talked with his sons about that, right? The Farhats and the Currys were close, right? The families were close.
Very close.
Yeah.
And then, Fred, once he retired, he just didn't, go off into oblivion like so many other wrestlers do. They retire and you never hear another word for him. His name, kept, popping up because he was training his sons. Yeah. And, they became, they really didn't make it into the TV, thing to where they can,
Yeah.
be shown worldwide. They were more on the independent side, but
Yeah.
still on the independent side, if you look up on YouTube and some of their matches, man, it's just like watching Fred as a young kid again.
It is. Yeah. I mean, and if, his Fred the third, he said that too, right? He talked about how he modeled after his father, right? He called himself the Rocket, to play off the flying thing. And he would take the drop kick and would think, well, what's the new take, right? He'd do it off the top rope and different things, just, paying homage to his thing. And Nick is great. If you watch Nick Curry, and of course, then there's Mike, who I don't believe has wrestled, but Mike is doing a lot online to help preserve that Curry family legacy, right? Sharing a lot of videos and stuff on TikTok and whatever the kids are doing, and helping, right? Trying to help show a little bit of that side. And
well, it was a couple of years ago that Fred Jr. Got a hold of me because he was going to start writing his book after he, did his father's book.
Yep.
And he really didn't have a lot of photographs.
Yeah.
And I sent him hundreds of photographs, to use in his book, and it still hadn't come out. He was still working on it up until the day he passed, so hopefully, one of the kids will take, that, material that he's got, and put a book out on him. It would be great to read it.
Yeah. Mike mentioned that. He said he has all those, he has piles of handwritten notes from Fred where he was working on that. And he has all that in he said one of his goals is to organize it, put it together, smooth it out, whatever he's got to do and get it out there. That he's he said he hates that he didn't get it done before Fred passed, but he still intends to do that. So
I certainly hope so, because he definitely deserves it. Has a great story to tell.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can get the great book that Brian Solomon wrote on the Sheik. Maybe we can get Brian Solomon, because it lives in that area. Maybe help out on that and get that project going.
That would be great. Yeah, there's so many. I mean, so many of these guys, right? I mean, there's tons of books out there, but there's still so many that I would love to read definitive, well done books on, right? And Bobo, right? Bobo. No one's done a definitive book on Bobo, and that's such a fascinating. I don't know. It might be hard to dissect through a lot of that information and everything, but that's okay. That's part of it, right? I mean, that's part of the story. And
so many guys from that era that really deserve Bobo. Definitely deserves Fred, Pampero Firpo, Fritz von Erich, more than anything, even though they did the movie, on the kids and stuff and Fred involved, but it really made Fritz look bad.
Yeah. And well, I don't want to get on the sidetrack, but Fritz had a whole career before the Sons that should, to be talked about on his own. I mean, that's fascinating. Even if you don't even get into the era with the Sons, there could be a whole book just on that part. And it's just, there's so many guys, but I hope they do finish. I'm going to keep pushing him, right? I'm in contact with him. Every so often, I'm going to reach out and say, hey, Mike, how's that book coming in? Because
there you go.
I definitely want to read it. Okay, Dave, I don't want to keep too long, but thanks for coming on and talking about Fred. And let's wrap it up with this. We've talked about how guys from that era, right, are often overlooked, underappreciated, et cetera, et cetera. Say you were writing the annals of wrestling history. How would you want Fred Curry and his legacy to be remembered?
Just a tremendous athlete, tremendous wrestler, a big fan favorite, came in, whatever match you saw him in, it was memorable. His drop kicks, the way he sold for his opponents. He was, a consummate professional, whether he went over or, he lost, it didn't matter. The fans, sometimes if, a wrestler loses, you almost think, the guy's career is over. The fans, could care less anymore. He's going to go down on the card and, he's going to be in the opening bout with, the magnificent Zulu or, one of the Lou Klein trainees. But Fred, that never happened. He always, he went over a lot, made it into the main events, semi-main events. When he lost, he came right back, with a victory or two. and he always made the guys he went against look great.
Yep.
And I can't say all the time the guys that he went against made Fred look great, but Fred made himself look great.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anybody wants to question the popularity of Fred Curry, just go look in the end. It's documented. 1972, most popular wrestler. It's there.
Yep.
If you want to look at the number, no denying it, right? He's there. So it's 1972. That's an accomplishment. I mean, that's at that time with the names that were out there. So
and if you look over my left shoulder here,
the pennant.
I got the Flying Fred Curry pennant right next to my Sheik portrait that was painted for me by superstar Billy Graham.
Oh,
so
nice.
I'm going to leave that up there, and when I come into my office here and look at that, I'll say, the Sheik is going against Fred Curry today, and Fred may get the fire, he may get the camel clutch, but the Sheik's going to take a few drop kicks too.
Yeah. Well, again, it's unfortunate Fred passed, but he did have a nice long life, nice long career. And I always say, right, if there's got to be a silver lining to losing these guys, it's hopefully it will raise the awareness a little bit, right? There's lots of people now mentioning Fred Curry. I think I keep saying, do I keep saying Fred Lynn? Do I keep mentioning? I don't wonder what that is. Anyway,
it's baseball season.
It is. I got baseball in the head. But hopefully these guys that are mentioning Fred, right, will continue to talk about him, continue to remember him. So I try to find the silver lining that it's nice to see the love, but it's let's maintain that, right? Let's keep talking about Fred, and let's make sure the guys that are still around, let's appreciate them while they're still here to know it. So because there's not there not many, right? We're losing them, and
right. And thank you for, doing the celebration of the name of Flying Fred Curry. Much appreciated, my friend.
Absolutely. I had to, right? How could you not? I mean, unbelievable. Yep. So, and of course, when I thought about it, Dave, your first name popped in that, that I wanted to have on here to talk about Fred and his career because, Detroit, Fred, Dave Drason, it's all intertwined. You can't think of one without the other. So,
thank you.
I think I did one time 20, but I mean, the guy was hitting the wall with. He just lay on the mat and stick his shoulder up. I said, man, get up. I can't move. It was tough. It's easy. It's not easy to throw. It's hard. If you know what you're doing, it's easy.
And welcome back to Wrestling Nostalgia. At this time, I'm being joined by two of the sons of Flying Fred Curry, who we lost on April 3rd. Mike and Fred the Third. Guys, how are you?
Doing
well.
Great,
good, Dave. How you doing?
I'm okay.
All things considering.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I want to lead with, right, obviously, my condolences, guys, for losing your father. Those of us, we lost a guy we looked up to, a guy we were a fan of. But it's different for you guys, right? You lost your dad. It's different. So, But one thing that always comes out of this when you talk about personalities is that outpouring of love, right? I've been pushing for years talking about Flying Fred Curry, and now it's so great to see everybody else showing that love, making posts and everything else. So let's talk through a few things. Let's start a little background, right? Obviously, go back from Fred. Your grandfather, Wild Bull Curry.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk, because how can you talk about the Currys at all in any way without at least mentioning Wild Bull?
Well, Wild Bull Curry is one of the greatest legends in all of professional wrestling.
Definitely.
And Mike has been chronicling this through our TikTok channel. So Bull Curry, he was a beat cop in Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day he went to Detroit. This is a short version. There's all kinds of versions of stories about how Bull Curry became Bull Curry.
Yeah.
But the professional reason is he went to Detroit. There was a promoter there called, his name was Adam Weissmiller. He was the brother of Johnny Weissmiller, who played Tarzan in the old movies.
Yep.
So he was running a promotion out there. Now, when my grandfather was younger, like when he was in his early teens, he would participate in the carnivals, in the tough man competitions. taking on all comers. And basically, back in those days, the Depression era days, he would do these fights. Basically, MMA before it was MMA, for a basket of food or fruit or whatever. So he grew up tough, and then he took on boxing, and he became a professional boxer. And it led to the encounter with Adam Weissmiller, who was running that Detroit territory. And I guess the legend goes is that when our grandfather got there, he slept on top of the YMCA building. He didn't have a car. He didn't have anything. And then he worked the show the next day and then drove home in a Cadillac. And that's how Bull Curry started. He was already nicknamed Bull Curry growing up, because when he was a young kid, his nickname was the Bull, and maybe Mike can elaborate on that. But there's a legendary story about Wild Bull Curry when he was a beat cop in the streets of Hartford. And as legend goes, a bull got out of its pen, and so he had to chase it down in his beat cop uniform and wrestle the bull to the ground. And that's how the real legend of Wild Bull Curry began. The name, the personality, the aura that Bull Curry had. Now, I've seen pictures of our grandfather and that young calf, so perhaps it was a little exaggerated what size the bull was, but that's how Bull became the Bull. And his first match was for Adam Weissmiller in Detroit. He was the king of the wild men.
Yeah.
He was a notorious heel. A riot starter. I mean, we have a book called The Walking Riot that Flying Fred Curry wrote.
Yep.
And we do have copies of those, and basically
there chronicles. Yep, there it is.
How Wild Bull Curry would start riots. Now, these stories are true, 100% true, because they were reported in the newspapers back in those days.
Right.
Whether it was in Canada, whether it was in Texas, whether it was in Rochester, New York. He would get so much heat, Dave, that the fans would turn against him. And he was never scared to go out in the crowds with the fans.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't take it either. So if a fan took a shot at him, they'd get a shot back at him. So there's stories about him knocking out people for 3 days. One time he got hit in the leg with a bow and arrow in New Mexico. I mean, who does that? But this is the kind of reaction Bull Curry got. I have a story I just told Michael about not long ago, since we've been around our father all the past week and just getting together and telling these stories. And there was a wrestler named Red Bastien.
Yep.
Cauliflower Alley legend.
Yep.
And I was at the Cauliflower Alley Club with my father, and I think it's when my grandfather was posthumously awarded some kind of honor. We were there. And so Dad went to sleep or whatever. I went downstairs. We were in the Riviera Casino. So all the boys, all the older gentlemen, whether it was Nick Bockwinkel or Sputnik Monroe, they're all down there. And so I go to the bar down there, and I'm gonna have a drink with Sputnik Monroe and Red Bastien. I mean, who am I? I'm a young kid. I don't know nothing. So Red Bastien and Sputsy were telling me stories about Bull Curry, and Red Bastien was telling me one story.
Oh, I love this story.
Yeah, he was Red Bastien was a young baby face, and he was wrestling Bull Curry in Texas, and it was dingy, dark arenas back then, so you couldn't really see out. So Red's in the ring. He's got his red shiny robe on. He's got his bleach blonde hair, and he never saw Bull Curry before the match. It's not like today where you have you have people telling you what to do or setting up your matches. You don't have any producers.
Yeah.
The heels stay on one end of the building and the baby faces stayed on the other end of the building. Then somebody would come up with some kind of finish, and they wouldn't know what each other was going to do till they got in that ring. That's how good of workers they were back then. So Red Bastien is in the middle of the ring, and he's waiting for Bull Curry to come out. Nothing, silence. And then all of a sudden at the back of the arena, because it's very dark, the double doors open up, boom. And then the lights from the other hallway can be there, so you're blinded by them. And he couldn't see Bull Curry running into the ring. All he could see is chairs flying up, women, children running, screaming like King Kong was coming in the building. And Red Bastien just sitting there with his mouth open, staring at this. He still can't see the man. He just sees the chaos behind the man. And the ref looks at him and he hits him in the shoulder and says, "Hey, kid, you here to watch the match or you're here to wrestle in the match?" That's how wild Bull Curry was.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, tell me then, talk about before we move on, talk about the other side of Wild Bull. What did your dad say about Bull as a father?
They were best friends. And Bull Curry was hard on my father. So basically, how my father became a professional wrestler. My grandfather was the wildest, craziest man there was ever in the ring. Outside of the ring, he was the sweetest guy ever. You'd never see him flash possessions or money or anything like that. It's not because he didn't have it, because he was old school, Depression era kid. So if he would stay in a hotel room in a certain town, it would be the cheapest, dingiest hotel you could ever see in your life. But then the next morning, and I've heard people tell me these stories about him, he would get up 5 a.m., cigar, newspaper, go have breakfast, and he would always give to the homeless people that were on the street. And then us growing up, I was lucky enough to see my grandfather, where unfortunately Mike never met him. He passed away when I was 8 years old, but he liked to garden. He liked to take walks on the beach. I was talking the other day about how I have pictures of him and I when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And this man, Wild Bull Curry, that you see in these magazines, he's walking on the beach with flip-flops and a Hawaiian shirt and a green plastic rimmed hat that they wore back in the 80s.
Yeah.
My father adored my grandfather. He looked up to him. He was his hero. Now, just like my father to us, he's your staunchest supporter and is your greatest critic.
Yeah.
So Bull, if every once in a while, Dave, if I call him Pa, that's who I'm talking about. That's what we call Bull Curry, Pa.
Yeah.
So it might slip out here and there.
Okay.
But my grandfather was always at my dad's collegiate football games at UConn.
Mm-hmm.
And he took Dad with him on the road in the summertime. So my father became a very good football player because one summer in particular, Bull was working the Dallas territory, so he took Flying Fred, before he was Flying Fred, down with him to partake in the matches, whether it was selling programs or even he had to ref a couple matches sometimes. But the Dallas Cowboys were down there, and my grandfather, they were doing their summer practicing. So my father got to practice with the Cowboys when he was in high school and do their summer routines and their summer workouts.
Yeah.
So he came back, with the Cowboys. He naturally came back ball of fire. He had a all-state, all-American season that season, but it's because my grandfather gave him that opportunity.
Yeah.
And the same thing with wrestling. They didn't go to wrestling school back then, Dave. They didn't exist at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were either allowed to be in the business or not. So that's why being a legacy wrestler was a fortunate thing, because not anybody on the street could get in the business unless they were an oddity or they had a certain look or an athlete or whatever. So the way Dad tells the story is that before his first match, which was in the Boston Garden, I think the promoter was Tony Santos or Paul Bowser. I can't remember which one. And my grandfather, my father got in the yard, and they started just doing a couple holds and a couple turnarounds and all that stuff. And my dad always gravitated towards the high flyer work. So he liked the Argentina Rockas, the Eduardo Carpintier's, things like that. Argentina Rocca was his hero. So, my grandfather's like, okay, throw a drop kick, throw another drop kick, throw another drop kick. So Bull Curry ain't never taken a drop kick in his life in the ring, by the way. But for my father, he thought that's the road he should take. So they go to the Boston Garden, and who does my father have to wrestle that night for his first match, Dave? First match. He just stumbled around in the yard 3 hours ago. Yeah. He's going to wrestle Boris Malenko.
Oh, okay. No.
Dean Malenko's father.
Yeah.
So he goes in the ring and has the match. It had to stink. I mean, I'm sure it did. So when they get to the back, Boris Malenko goes up to my grandfather. He goes, "This kid's stiff." Because he probably stiffed him a million times in there, but that was his first match.
Yeah.
Flying Fred Curry.
And contrary to your grandfather, with that, your grandfather had the wild style. Your dad was the slick, good-looking babyface.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, Fred had that high-flying style and was known for the drop kick. Yeah. And it was the high-flying style, though, in those days was much different than today, right? The drop kick was considered high-flying.
Yeah.
Do you guys know, did your dad ever see any modern wrestling and the high-flying now and what he thought of that style? Because I can only imagine what Fred would have to say about that.
Okay. So he, first of all, he was very innovative with his moves. You know, head scissors, hurricane ranas. He did over the top rope drop kicks. He did drop kicks off the top rope, which I adopted. A lot of like cutesy stuff, like sweet little roll-ups, victory rolls, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about being a babyface is you're always trying to win.
Mm-hmm.
So he would always throw in like quick little things to try to get a pin. So he had a lot of cool little moves. Now, as far as his opinion of modern day wrestling, well, him, just like any of the legends, they look at it as, first of all, it's impressive, the stuff these guys can do now. These guys do stuff that I wouldn't even ever do. I've been removed from it for a while now, and I did a lot of flying stuff. But like to do like reverse hurricane ranas on the apron and to take like bumps, off the apron, like
if you ask him though, he said he would do it. He'll say he'll do it.
He wouldn't do any of that. There's no freaking way he'd take one of those bumps. But the way he looks at it, basically, like when he would critique my match, and then when he would look at modern day matches, you don't. They lost sight of. They want to get so much in to impress the fans as far as what they can do. They don't think about what they should do,
right,
or how they should do it.
Yeah.
So therefore, you lose the. Now there are workers that know how to pace a match. You get a Cody Rhodes, you get a Randy Orton. Those guys know because they know, they grew up in it. But there's other guys can do that too. But when you look at like a high flying, high hitting modern day match, they hit each other with so quickly that nobody ever sells or registers. Half the time you don't know who's giving a move and who's taking a move.
Yeah.
And you'll get hit. You'll see a guy get hit with a Meteora, which is insane, and then get up 3 minutes later and come back with something. So Dad would say stuff like, geez, what next? What are you going to take a gun for the finish? Because that's what you have to do. Like, what are you going to do to top what these guys just did? It's crazy. It's crazy. And that's, that's why you see a lot of injuries. These guys and girls, they get hurt a lot because they're doing too much.
Yeah.
And they'll be out for like 7 months, because what you're trying to do is you can't do that forever.
Yeah. Well, do you think though, were there guys back in the day that would say, well, that damn Fred Curry, what's he going out there throwing 10 drop kicks for?
Oh, you know it.
It's a generational thing, right? It always happens, right?
Yeah, let me tell you how much you cared about that. Zero.
That's right. Well, there is the infamous story that there was a match where Fred threw 15 to 20 drop kicks in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's tell. Where does the reality lie in all this? And how did Fred tell that story? Was that a fish story for Fred?
Oh, he'll say it was. First of all, he'll say it was 22 drop kicks in 8 seconds.
Of course, right?
Those stories. I mean, my father throwing a drop kick he didn't wait for you to get up. By the way,
no.
Like, right. You either got up or you didn't. So It wasn't like, okay, plant. All right, take the drop kick, bounce off the chest. Okay, we get up, plant again. No, it was.
Yep.
So if you got up, you got up. If you didn't, he'd hit you on your side. He'd hit you trying to get up. That's why when he wrestled Sheik, the original Sheik at Fairhat, Sheik would never take a bump. He would just do it would make my dad so mad. He would just basically do a spin, put his hand on the ground, and spin back into it.
Yeah.
So he would never take a bump.
Yeah.
Those guys had an interesting relationship.
Yeah, well, and I know I talked to Fred not too long ago, right? And he talked a lot about the dropkick. he loved to talk about the dropkick. Mike, you spent a lot of time recently, right, in documenting on TikTok. Fred telling a lot of stories. How often in these conversations did he come up with telling these dropkick stories?
Oh my gosh! So listen, how often? This is the one thing he would always talk about. The number one thing he would talk about when he would talk about these dropkick stories. It wasn't about, it was literally about the excitement he would get when the crowd started counting. Yeah. So like his biggest things, he would keep on, if they kept counting, he'd keep on throwing them. He loved to say that. So anytime it went back to dropkicks, it was always about, you know, the crowds and like that whole connection. And that's what really, from my perspective and from my side of like, you know, honing in on this stuff, really like that was like his biggest thing. But it would always, the drop kicks, it was when he was talking about me with it, it was always about this like fan connection type of deal. Yeah. And it was just constant. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. No,
Mike's right. He would throw as many as they kept counting. He'd keep going. I don't know how.
Well, tell me now, Fred, you're the oldest son, correct?
Yeah.
Fred, right? Where were you born?
I was born in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. So Fred
breaking up a little.
No, yeah, sorry, it's okay. Fred obviously was known as a Midwest guy, but he did have this great stint in the 70s in Texas. This great run, and you know, teaming with Fritz von Erich as a big star. Did he move to Texas? Did he relocate to Texas for that, or was he traveling down for big shows and stuff?
No. When those guys would work a territory, get sent to a territory, they would move down there.
Yeah. So was this prior to you being born, though, Fred?
Yeah. I wasn't a part of that. When I was born, he was pretty much. When I was born, he was doing his last stint with WWF.
Okay.
So he was going back and forth to New York.
Right.
But when he did that stint in Texas with Fritz von Erich, and it's a good thing you brought up Fritz von Erich because he's a hero of my father's. He would move down there. So for instance, when he did that, he lived in Texas. When he was the Hawaiian heavyweight champ, he lived in Hawaii, and they would go for like anywhere from 6 to 9 month stints. My grandfather was in Japan for 2 years once.
Yeah.
Never came home.
Yeah.
So yeah, they would live in those areas.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead. Did someone say that? No, okay.
No.
All right. So Fred, you were born in what, 77? Did I look it up right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
77.
Give away my secrets.
Hey. I was born in 75, Fred, so I'm older than you.
Okay,
so,
all right.
Yeah. So Mike, you can razz me, not Fred. The way I saw Fred most initially was when he was doing the Bruiser Bedlam stuff with Jerry Graham, which you would have been in your teens, right? Early teens in that time period, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I saw many of those matches.
Yeah, you would have had to been right knee deep in it at that time.
Yeah.
What was it like? Because maybe Mike probably didn't experience this as much.
Nope.
What was it like, Fred, for you? Because you're going to school. And your dad's on TV in the area. Yeah. And did people give you, because there's two sides of this probably, right? You have a group that probably love Fred Curry because of the TV. They love wrestling. Yeah. But there's probably also that, what's that fake shit, what your dad does, and tried to give you a hard time. Did you experience all that?
Yeah. You know, my father in the Columbus area in Ohio, Detroit, he was so revered as a personality that I would certainly get that fake stuff. And that, you know, when I was brought up, you know, kayfabe was a real thing. So I was not exposed to the business. I can't remember how old I was. I can remember how he did it though. But when I would go to those matches, you know, I wouldn't think anything of it. So if he was wrestling Jerry Graham Jr. or the Sheik or whatever, I just thought that's what they did. You know, it's like guys that box. They're actually hitting each other.
Yep.
So you know, my father wouldn't divulge that until later. But I would have people tell me all the time that that's fake and blah blah blah, and I'm like, it's not, and you come to blows sometimes with people over it. You're a little kid.
Yeah.
Back in those days, getting and pushing matches with people, but it wasn't too bad. I would defend it even after I learned that it was a work.
Sure.
I would defend it because that's what he did. And I had the privilege, those matches in those days, he was off like WWF, and you can't call them indie matches. They weren't necessarily. They still had their local TV, but I saw him wrestle in horse tracks at carnivals. I saw him wrestle in high school gyms. I saw him wrestle in VFWs. All kinds of buildings, and it was fun because in the summertime I would go up and down the roads with him.
Yeah.
And he still worked regular, but on the weekends he would wrestle shows, and it was really really cool to, we'd always stay in like hotel rooms and just to be in the back in the locker room amongst those guys. It's thinking about it, it's like the Great Wojo and all those guys from back then. JW Hawk. I mean, there were so many of them. And Bobo Brazil would show up every once in a while, and just Sabu before he was Sabu was around.
Yeah,
he would take care of me a lot, actually, which is funny because I would come to tag team with him later on in life, but I could just go in and out of the locker rooms as I please. So I thought I was the coolest kid there, because people would see me, other kids would see me just do that because the fans were always hot for the shows. They always were hot for the show.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me to watch those shows, the experience, I can still smell what the locker room smells like. I can still smell what a ring smells like. That's not just from doing it myself, but from back in those days. So like when I started professional wrestling, to be involved in it, it was like all that was like reminiscent of those days that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And just to be around it was so cool. But like those matches, before I knew it was work, I don't know how I didn't put it together because every match was the same in every town between all the guys. So like the match between my father and the Sheik, I've seen it 100 times, and I could call it right now for you. Sheik would sometimes come out in a limo. My dad would be in the ring, and the people would be cheering for him. Dad would get a little shine spot. Sheik would try to come through the ropes. He'd cut him off. Then the Sheik would end up pulling a gimmick out, whether it's a pencil or a foreign object, hit my dad in the throat. Suddenly my dad would get color. They would walk the walk across Texas, not really Texas, but into the stands. Sometimes they would go into the bathroom, into the where the food was, where the merch was, fighting all over the place. They'd get back in the ring, and dad would end up hitting him with a few drop kicks, and eventually, so he hit him with like 3, and on the third one, the gimmick would fly up in the air, and my dad's bleeding, right? He can't find this thing because Sheik was very good about hiding it from the ref. It was an art form, because when people would see that, they'd be like, "Oh my God, it's right there! It's right there!" Ref would be like, "I don't see anything." So the heat, right? And then Dad would end up getting the foreign object or the pencil or whatever, and he'd look at Sheik, and he'd touch his head with the blood, and he'd look at the object, and he'd look at Sheik, and he'd start hopping up and down and fired up, and the people would say, "Yeah," and he'd go over, and he'd hit Sheik in the head until he got color, and then the ref would see Dad with the foreign object, ding, 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 DQ. Yeah. Seen it 100 times.
Yeah.
It was amazing every time.
Yeah. And Mike, it's a different experience for you, right? Because you weren't there. You didn't experience this. But yet you're hearing these stories and you've heard them all over the years, right?
Yeah.
And you hear like Fred's just sharing these stories, all these other wrestlers, and you read all these, and that's your dad. It's got to be, I mean, it's fascinating to hear for me to hear Fred tell that story. But for you, it's a different level, right? It's
insane.
Surreal that, hey, that guy's your dad doing that.
Yeah. It's even crazier. It's even more intense now because this whole time, right? I really didn't I wasn't as interested in wrestling. I mean, I remember being, 13 and going through memorabilia with my dad, and he was selling them on eBay and I would help him. And even then, now in this moment, specifically more than ever, I'm like thinking about those times. I'm like, what the hell were you doing, Mike? And I guess it was for a good reason because this like discovering like all these stories in this newfound, like, enthusiasm is insane. And what I'm uncovering and what I'm discovering is just like this genuine, true, amazing, insane story that I've fallen in love with, and more than I could have imagined, So thank God for hearing stories like this and I get to hear them from my brother. When we were talking over the weekend, I'm losing my shit. You know what I mean? I'm like really, because like each piece of the puzzle, as I'm uncovering like this legacy as a whole, and I haven't got to some of the craziest parts yet on the TikTok.
Yeah.
It's just wild. It's a wild ride. I love it.
Yeah. And
he makes me remember things that I forgot. Mike, when he gets all excited about hearing these stories, it's incredible.
Yeah, well, it's great, right? Because that's what happens, right? When there's a new generation or a new person, whoever discovers this, and they're hyped up, well, that kind of rejuvenates that excitement in you, right? And you start getting the memories, and it's kind of cool. That's how it works. And I know we talked about your dad and how proud he was of the drop kick.
Yes.
I do know from talking to Fred, meeting Fred a couple times, that another thing he was very proud of was the 1972 most popular wrestler of the year. And I've heard Fred mention that many times. And I believe, did he still have the plaque, trophy, whatever? I remember seeing that one time somewhere in Chillicothe. I think he had something showing 1970 most popular wrestler.
There's so many somewheres. We're missing, we're waiting.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny about that PWI professional most popular. He didn't even know, Dave, about it, and I forget what I was getting into, because those guys back then didn't read the PWI or whatever.
Sure.
And he that year he had it split with Jack Briscoe, and they were tagging in Australia that year.
Oh yeah.
So I this is when I started getting interested in wrestling myself, and then I looked up like the PWI, one of the either it was a book or a magazine or whatever, and I'm looking at like, because I'm trying to like believe my father about how over he was and how legendary Bull Curry was. So I'm like, let's take a look at this. I want to see if this is legit. So I'm looking at most popular wrestler of the year, and I'm going back, right? And it's like 87, Hulk Hogan, blah, blah, blah. Then I keep going down the list. It's 1972. There he is.
And you had to say, damn, he was right.
And so I go, did you know about this? He goes, know about what? And I showed him. He was like, son of a gun. He was like, he might have forgot. Yeah. He was like, will you believe me now?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. But he was mad proud of that. He should have been too, because every name on that list of most popular wrestler of the year are all legends, superstars.
Well, especially in 72, right? When every territory had those guys, right? I mean, that's something, especially for 72.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot deeper pull.
You still had Bruno around. You had Pedro Morales. You had Dory Funk Jr. You had tons of guys. So for him to get selected for that, it says something.
Exactly.
You look at that back then. That meant a lot more than like it does now. You look like the PWI 500 doesn't mean. Anyway, you write your own name in.
Sure. Well, it's more now about who can you put on the cover to sell a magazine or two. But back then it was a little. And Mike, this might be a better. Let's ask you this, because Fred kind of gave the perspective of what Fred was like as a dad, but that's when he was an active wrestler.
Yeah.
You talked to us a little bit about what was Fred like when he's a little more removed from the business. Was Fred just kind of that normal retired guy?
No, not at all. No, he's larger than life. He's always larger than life, constantly.
Yeah.
Always talking shit everywhere. Like, it really is. Like, there is a sense of every room that he walked into where, like, there was this, like, presence about him. It wasn't normal. He wasn't like a normal dad in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact of he'd cook us amazing dinners. You know what I mean? And he would, he's really involved in sports, but he was not just normal. No, he was flying Fred Curry.
Yeah.
From the beginning. So now from this other side of it, yeah, there's a lot that goes on, and it's very, I mean, it was a long, funny road, but no, he's a star through and through, like truly.
So Fred was quite the cook. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's an amazing cook.
What did Fred cook? What was his special?
Oh my gosh. He's great at cooking meat, grape leaves, or I mean, he's Lebanese, right?
Yeah.
So my favorite food that he cooks ever is his stuffed grape leaves.
Oh, yeah.
I dream about them. I love them. The best. Number one. He's really good at cooking. I mean, cooking fish, vegetables. He would make like really fancy mango, like fruit platters.
Are there Fred Curry recipes then that are getting passed down as well?
Yes, we have the grape leaf recipe.
Yeah.
We do have that.
That's remarkable.
Yes.
Yeah. That's man, that sounds like a Curry thing, does it not? I mean, it's just there's that whole other side, right? That sounds like a
he learned how to cook when he was working in the Detroit territory. He would go into certain restaurants and they would let him in the kitchen. Whoever owned it, and he would cook on the line.
Yeah.
When he was a wrestling star. And that's how, a lot of the there was a lot of Greek restaurants in Detroit, and there was a couple of them, the Grecian Garden. He would go back there and he would work a dinner service. That's crazy.
It really is like,
you know that, Mike?
It sounds, our family stories, I mean, to a certain extent, it did sound like crazy. Like it's like unbelievable stuff, right? It's not normal, even your stories, Freddie. Growing up, your high school year, that's like, what do you do that in movies?
Yeah.
Like, how is it like this? I don't know.
That cracks me up. I mean, I love stuffed grape leaves, so I'm very jealous I never got to taste Fred's.
Let's get back on it.
Yeah. Made me lose my train of thought there for a minute. Got hungry. And so again, I get to meet Fred a few times, right? And
They're really good. We can talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's making me hungry. I totally lost my train of thought now. I'm totally thinking about food. Again, I met Fred a few times. Like I said, talked to him, and he was always that personality, right? Because it's that what you saw from Fred. That was Fred. There wasn't a lot of difference between that guy that I oversaw on TV and the guy I talked to over the years, at different times and met. I mean, I remember when I first met him in Chillicothe, he knew who I was because I talked to him and everything else. And I remember walking in this gym, and he was right there, right inside the door. That's where his table was, right? He had all these trophies and stuff and everything. And I walk in, he goes, "I know you." And he goes, "Dave, come here." And he's like, he just grabbed me. And then he's like, he was showing me, "Oh, look at this, look at this, look at this." He was just showing me all this stuff. But, gave me the book, the Wild Bull book. He gave me one and all this stuff. And it's like he had this, he loved to talk wrestling. Loved to tell those stories. And every time I talked to him, it was like that, right? It's like he was telling them to you for the first time. And you guys talked about, and Fred, you talked about, right? Obviously in Detroit, it's very, Sheik versus Curry, very well known. If it hadn't been for a guy named Bobo Brazil, that probably would have been the most prominent feud in Detroit, right? It's Sheik versus Curry. Behind the scenes, were the Currys and the Far Hats, were they close? Were they friends?
Oh yes, very. They were great friends. Bull and Sheik, they had their own rivalry, and it would go to them against each other. I mean, really, our grandfather was the innovator of the hardcore style, and Sheik was a little younger, so Sheik adopted that style with Bull Curry.
Yeah.
So when they would tag together, they would go crazy, and they were just such oddities and personalities that they would be great. But then when they went against each other, it would be even better. And that's one thing about my grandfather that I love. When he was a baby face, very rarely, he was a baby face like Steve Austin was a baby face. And I'm not talking about saying any comparison other than the point that he never changed his personality.
Yeah, it's kind of the anti-hero, right?
Yeah, he was a baby face because he was put in the situation to be a baby face. I've seen him do it. I had tapes where I've seen him do it a few times, and people go bananas when he's the baby face. Like, for instance, that Johnny Valentine video
Oh yeah.
Bull Curry's the baby face in that. But he's not being Bull Curry. He's not going around slapping hands. So with the Fire Hats, I dare say Sheik would slap me around if I was saying his name out loud, especially on camera. But we were always close with them. I remember growing up, going to Sheik's house, and then, like I said, Sabu used to watch after me in the locker rooms, to the point where my second match that I ever had, the original Sheik was there. He had Sabu drive him down. Sabu, Sheik, and Joyce came too, Sheik's wife. And it was such an honor. But I have a painting that the Sheik painted on the side. And I have a painting of, I should have brought it up here. I have a painting of that he did of Wild Bull Curry, and it said it was for me. It's two grandson of Wild Bull Curry. This was before Mike and Nick were around. Nick particularly is very jealous that I have this painting, and I'm not giving it to him either. But that's how close they were.
Yeah.
For him to paint me a picture of Bull Curry says a lot. And there's other stories about their shenanigans and things in the past, but yeah, they always rode in the. My father and Sheik would always drive together to the shows in Detroit. He would always stay at Sheik's house, the mansion there.
Yeah, the mansion. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they were close, very close.
Well, I will be at another soon. I'll be talking. I'm also going to talk to Supermouth Dave Drason, who managed Sheik, obviously entrenched in that Detroit wrestling. We're going to talk a little more about Fred, the career side, right? A little more nuts and bolts, kind of, not the man as much as talking with you guys. But I'm curious to hear some of his, right? Because I think Detroit wrestling, Dave Drason's one of those guys I think of. And
he's the expert.
He is. So he's very excited to come to talk to me and pay tribute to your father. And again, it's one of those. There's so many guys in the wrestling that you could say it for, right? That were underappreciated, right? Because a lot of it's timing, right? Because there's not as much videotape of certain eras and certain time periods. I've always lumped Fred Curry in there as one of those guys that's underappreciated, does not get spoken enough about. That's why I'm glad, Mike. So glad when I saw you doing the TikTok, because I'm like, this is what you do, right? To bring this to the modern generation in a way that they're gonna the clickbait, soundbite, or whatever it's called. I don't know. I'm old too.
TikTok.
I have a TikTok, but I just post weird pictures. It's I don't even know what I'm doing. But
we love it. No, it's cool. It's fun. But that really is. That's what it was. And oh my God, there's so much. There's so cool. So much to tell that really honestly has so much to do with what we're watching right now. So it's like, it's not just like nostalgia, it's relevance. It's crazy.
Yeah. But it was so cool. It's so cool, the clips of Fred on there and seeing him talk. And I mean you had clips right up almost to the day, right? Talking with him. And it's I always love seeing them when they pop up, right? And you did them. It was just heartwarming, but now it's a totally different perspective, right? Because it's not just, I don't know how you describe it, right? It's not just hearing him tell these stories. Now it's almost like, man, that preserving those last days, the last time, and that's pretty incredible. And like I said, we have that out there. I obviously want to do this tribute episode, right? There's all these things. People are, unfortunately, because of the situation, people are now talking about Fred, a little in the moment. But when you guys, as his sons, and right, preserving the legacy and everything else, what would you like people to remember when they think of Fred Curry in the future? What do you key
the Dropkick King? Honestly, what a great baby face. Like, I want them to remember I really want them to remember the stamp that was left on pro wrestling, because the thing is when you're talking about people like my dad, Flying Fred Curry, like you're talking about a legacy that spans past himself, right? So we've got, literally the most feared man in wrestling, and then with like one of the most loved, the Dropkick King, the Heartbreaker, like that kind of polarity, like what that, oh God, there's so much juicy tidbits. I'm never going to stop talking about this. It's insane.
Sure. Yeah.
So what I want them to remember is what a freaking badass Dropkick King he was, and his stamp in pro wrestling, which is a big stamp.
Yeah, and in the 70s context, the drop kicks, he was pushing wrestling, right? Towards the direction it is now, whether he loved it or not.
Yeah.
He was helping to push it, to evolve it, to advance it on, which that's what the greats do, right? They don't just come and do it. They develop, they enhance it. They put their mark on it so much that it changes the sport in some way, right?
So Dave, we call him, or he has been called, the world's greatest babyface.
Yes.
Eddie Creechman and Abdullah Farouk, the Grand Wizard, both labeled him as the world's greatest babyface.
Yes,
and he was, and that's what he wants to be remembered as. And he when Mike does did these interviews with him and these TikToks, you can just listen to the passion and thank goodness Mike has done all this, because it has preserved our father's thoughts about it. I can tell stories all day, but there's nothing like seeing it in front of you.
Sure.
And when he talks about his wrestling career, and when he cuts baby face promos, but the difference is it's legitimate. So when he says stuff like, "For you people out there who believed in me, who stood by my side, I will never let you down," things like that, that's the real deal. That's the real article. And that's the way Mike's right, 100% right. That's the way he was in real life. Anything. To me personally, he was super inspirational in that fashion, where, I take those notions with me every day, and it makes you a better person. And he's the world's greatest babyface.
Yeah.
World's greatest babyface.
Did Fred ever get to work heel anywhere? Did he ever? I didn't think so.
He's slightly okay. There was two instances. When he was tagging with Jack Briscoe in Australia, the last match that they had before they left was against each other. So babyface match, right? Of course, in every babyface match, one of them's got to be a little heelish.
Yeah, right.
So he was a little heelish in that one, and he loved it. He loved it, by the way. And then there was another time, I can't remember who my grandfather was wrestling at the time. Somebody that was taking liberties with him in the ring. So my dad was always watching my grandfather's matches from the back. So he knows the difference.
Yeah.
So he saw, and the guy was a big time babyface. I can't remember who he was, but Dad stormed the ring and shoot and went after the guy and punched the guy and all that. So the people started booing my father, and my father wanted to go with it. He wanted to stay heel because he was getting he got a lot of heat for doing that. Of course, the Sheik was like, no, you can't do that. You got to be a babyface. So how they turned him babyface again was they got like a hypnotist or something in there. Bobo Brazil brought him in the ring.
That's right, with the headbutt, the cocoa butt.
And gave him a cocoa butt, and he shook out of it and became a babyface again.
I remember that.
Oh my God, I didn't know that part of the story.
I do remember
Dad
that
told
story.
me. It's on our TikTok. Dad told me that story about when he thought someone was messing with the ring and how he went in, but I didn't get this last bit of it.
Yeah, that's how he became a babyface again. Bobo Brazil brought him in the ring, and he said, Fred, Dad was grimacing to Bobo, and they were like good friends in the ring. And Bobo says, Fred, I hate to do this to you, but I got to do what I got to do. And he cocoa butted him, which was Bobo's move, and Dad took the bump and then shook it off, and it started hopping up and down again. And the people, believed it.
That's great.
Oh my God.
Oh, that is great. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Talking about the Curry Wrestling Legacy TikTok.
Yeah.
Mike, how can people find that? What's the easiest way?
So you can find it a couple different ways. You can go to currywrestlinglegacy.com. So right now I did our shop page is down just because I didn't want to be processing orders like right now. I just didn't want to be dealing with that.
Of course.
So that's one thing. But currywrestlinglegacy.com, TikTok, right? Flying Fred Curry. If you search Flying Fred Curry on TikTok, you don't even have to type in Curry. You're going to find me. It's going to be in the top users or my actual. Yeah, that's Flying Fred Curry is the TikTok handle. So there you go.
All right. But the shop will be back up. Right?
Oh, the shop will be back up. Yeah.
And
like probably in like a little bit of time. Like I want to focus on what we got right now.
Of course.
Yeah.
And will you have that we mentioned that we saw the Bull Curry book. Do you still have copies of that? That will be back up on the shop? when it's open. Is that right?
Oh, 100%. And there's gonna be signed copies too.
There you
by
go.
Flying Fred Curry.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I got them. I've got about 40 copies left.
Good. All right. So what? Obviously, I know you guys are still processing, right? You lost your father. There's obviously a lot going on.
One real quick. Can I interject one thing?
Sure.
Okay, my favorite thing, if anybody does go to currywrestlinglegacy.com, in the Your Story page in the navigation, there's a place where you can submit a memory.
Okay.
Right now, I'm finding that's like, so I've gotten some people to, found themselves on my webpage. They submit memories of Flying Fred Curry, Wild Bull Curry, anything about pro wrestling. Like there's a whole write-up on it about what to do. That's probably the number one best thing, because I'm also working on my dad's handwritten autobiography book, right? So I'm putting all that together. So that's one good thing.
Well, that leads
but now, yes,
straight into my next question. Obviously, I know you haven't had full time to process it all, but what is there? Are there any direction on what kinds of things can we expect from the future? You just mentioned
we're not going to stop.
You just mentioned autobiography.
Yeah. There's that. So I've got pages of my dad's it's his handwritten stories. I mean, he gave this to me a couple years ago to work on. It's kind of one of those sore subjects. I didn't get it done, but I've been gathering probably some of the most legit information possible, stories, fan connections. It's hard to process all of it because there's so much information, and to dilute these stories into it just is genuine gold. I don't even know what else to say. So it's on top of that. Also, I'm like building this. So I've gotten to Claude AI, right? So I've been scanning all of the memorabilia. So what I've been creating is this living archive database, 50 years pretty much of wrestling cards, programs, stories, articles, photos, all searchable, thousands of wrestlers, like thousands of forgotten legends. It's like insane.
Yeah.
That's also going to be going. Then there's freaking Freddie, who's I'm going to let finish.
Well, we're like Mike said, Dave, we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going. And it's also incorporated with us getting back involved in the wrestling business.
Yes.
Getting it back involved in the wrestling business. Since Mike started doing this, he's ignited a fire under me to a yearning almost for this business. And it's not just talking about it, though. There's a lot of people that reach out to us to come, not just do podcasts, but come to the shows and be involved in the shows, and to get back involved with the wrestling business helps the Curry legacy live on. We're not done yet. Flying Fred Curry's not done yet. And that's the goal. That's the ambition. We'll have those world's greatest babyface T-shirts made too, I think.
Yes.
I was going to ask that. Could we see some, for the merchandise, some shirts? This is, I mean, the golden age for independent wrestling figures. Lots of independent wrestling companies out there, or independent toy companies, doing figures. Can you imagine a cool ass 2-pack with?
What are you talking? It's a goal. That's in my top 10 goal list.
I mean, who doesn't want a 2-pack of Bull Curry and Fred Curry, right?
Every freaking mother trucker out there.
Hell, let's go. We go deeper. Hey, we could throw in the Rocket in there if we wanted, right? We could.
I might have a couple drop kicks left for me.
Sure, there you go. Of course. But can you throw 15 to 20 in 10 seconds?
No.
Okay.
I tried. I couldn't do it when I was 22 years old. Forget about now.
Yeah. Oh, well, guys, again, thanks for coming on. I could talk about Fred forever. I love Fred. I've always loved Fred. He was always every time, like I said, I spoke to him a few times. He was always great to me. So giving, so much fun to talk to. I was, again, condolences. I'm, so sorry to hear about his passing. But I'm glad to see, right, there's a passion to continue on that family legacy and to continue preserving, because, right, this is the age of nostalgia, right? It's the time period for people who are loving the history, and there's so many avenues for it, right, with technology and whatnot. So it's the perfect time to do that. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to see what comes forth from you guys and the Curry family. And like you said, no, go ahead.
we certainly appreciate your support, Dave. I mean, you've been great about keeping our family tradition and our family legacy in the public as much as you can, whether it's helping us to move the books or doing these interviews. I mean, I've interviewed with you a couple times, and it's important to us because, those recordings back then, they weren't kept. Most of those TV tapes were taped over again and again because film was so expensive. So to keep talking about it, keep the dialogue, that's what keeps it alive.
It was so remarkable that when I did the interview with Fred here not too long ago, I don't know how long it's been, within the last year, I think, whenever it was, I got so much feedback of people that said, thank you, because I remember Fred Curry and hadn't thought about him for a while. And then your interview came up and it just brought back this flood of memories from my childhood, and watching Fred and hearing him talk was just so amazing. And I got so much feedback for that episode. It was pretty, I loved it. It was incredible. That's exactly what I wanted, right? That's exactly what I wanted to do. Much like I think the approach of Mike, it's like preserve it while you can, so it was important. But I will tell you, if we do get that, Fred Curry t-shirt, I'll probably be one of the first ones to buy one. So I'm looking forward to that. Nice. Again, thank you guys. We'll stay in touch. Obviously, I'm sure we'll probably all talk. And Mike, I'm so glad. Again, I've talked to Nick before. I've talked to Fred before. Now I'm glad we completed the trilogy here.
My pleasure.
And having you guys on, I love your TikTok. I love it. I follow it. It's wonderful, wonderful must see for any wrestling fan. They've got to follow it. That's right. So again, guys, I'm sure we'll talk again. We'll be in contact again. I will forever support your family and everything you guys do. Thank you for your time. One last time, condolences. And I know it's a tough time. I know you're a busy time. So I appreciate you carving a little out for us and helping us fans, pay tribute to your dad.
Available on all streaming platforms. It's professional wrestling's greatest, largest, privately owned wrestling library. All the classic hits, flips, slams, and pins of yesteryear are on one place. It's Ultimate Classic Wrestling. Check out the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Mr. USA Tony Atlas, Tito Santana, Rick Martel, a who's who of professional wrestling's greatest spotlight stars ever to grace the squared circle, all in one place. Grab the best seat in the house for memories and mayhem on Ultimate Classic Wrestling.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here. Lots of new stuff happening here at WrestleCopia. If you haven't checked out our website at WrestleCopia.com, it's a great way to keep up with the latest episodes of all of your favorite Copia programming, from the Wrestling Memory Grenade to Regional Wrestling with the Territory Talk, the Wrestling Stoop with the legendary Bob Roop, and of course all of those programs also available at your favorite podcast streaming platforms. And if you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the Copia world, all the latest news, random thoughts, fun videos, pictures, and more, make sure to join the more than 33,000 followers over at Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. Don't be left out. And last but definitely not least, it's what keeps the entire machine going. I'm talking about Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. We appreciate your support in helping us pay the bills to keep the WrestleCopia podcast network running and enabling us to continue to bring you all the quality programming that we offer.
Okay, and thank you to the two Curry brothers and Dave Drason for coming on and sharing with me and helping me to celebrate the life and career and remembering Flying Fred Curry. Guys, follow me on social media. I'm on all the platforms. Just look up Nostalgic Dave Dynasty or at the Dave Dynasty, and you will find me there. Also, be sure to subscribe to me on YouTube for lots of classic wrestling content, plus all of my various podcasts. Go check out all of the WrestleCopia network of podcasts. You can find the individual shows on your favorite podcast platforms, or you can visit WrestleCopia.com. Also, be sure to check out my friends at the Ultimate Classic Wrestling Library. Visit ClassicWrestling.net to sign up for your account, and then download the app on all of your smart devices. Okay, next episode, guys, my guest will be former preliminary wrestler Tom Stone, who worked both in the WWF and the AWA, but worked several other territories and has lots of great stories to tell. It's a fun episode. It is a fun interview. And Tom has so much to talk about that we're going to have him back on in the future for part 2, because we did not even begin to cover all the great stories he had. So join me next episode for that. Once again, thank you for everybody for always listening to me, but specifically thank you for listening to this episode and helping us remember and celebrate Flying Fred Curry. And until next episode, guys, wherever you go and whatever you do, be good, be safe, and always keep on growing.
Fans, we brought you All-Star Championship Wrestling. This is Sam Manager thanking you for being with us and saying until next time, so long, everyone.